Hey everyone, this is Shpan, and welcome to my Daggerfall character creation guide. In this video, we'll be talking about Daggerfall's incredible character creation system, breaking down all the important information for you, and then we'll walk through making a custom class together. I won't just be showing you a really overpowered build and saying, okay, copy this and go have fun. There are plenty of other Daggerfall videos that already do this. Instead, I want to explain the character creation system, give you a bunch of suggestions, create a concept build together step by step, and hopefully by the end of the video, you'll understand Daggerfall's character creation system well enough to make your own unique build that works for the type of playthrough and game experience you want to create for yourself. But before we get started, if you like Daggerfall content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel or to my Patreon through the link in the video description below. I try to upload a few Daggerfall videos every week, including mod showcases, my Let's Play series, and Daggerfall guides just like this video. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. So first, we'll decide which race we want to play as. There are a few racial differences, but I wouldn't worry too much about them as overall they don't make a huge difference, and I recommend choosing whatever seems the most fun to you. But for the sake of having all the information available in this video, I'll go over it really quickly. So Argonians from Black Marsh here get reduced fatigue when swimming and can last longer underwater. The Bretons from High Rock here get resistance to magic, which is a pretty useful bonus. And the Dark Elves from Morrowind have bonus damage and chance to hit. High Elves from Somerset Isles have immunity to paralysis, and this is a pretty useful one, as paralysis I'd say is fairly common. However, free action as both a spell and a potion are pretty cheap, and you can cast it while paralyzed, so it's usually not a big deal after the early levels. In Elsewhere, we have the Khajiit, which get an increase to their climbing checks. And this is not anything too crazy, but climbing is actually a pretty useful skill in Daggerfall, especially if you plan to make a martial-only class or a build with limited magic capabilities. The Nords here get um, they get reduced frost damage, um, which is a pretty weak ratio in my opinion. You don't see frost damage too often, but there are a few enemies like Frost Daedra where it can be relevant later in the game. The Red Guards from Hammerfell get bonus damage and increased chance to hit. This is definitely the most useful racial for any martial class in this game. And lastly, we have the Wood Elves from Valenwood here, and they get bonus damage and chance to hit for archery only. So they are the natural choice for bow enthusiasts. Overall, unless you really want to min-max your character, it's more valuable, in my opinion, to just choose a race that fits the character you want to roleplay as, rather than choosing a race for the racial benefits. But that, of course, is your decision to make. For the sake of this video, I'll be making a Breton Paladin. Choose your gender preference. Um, your gender doesn't have any impact on your abilities, so nothing to worry about there. For this video, I'll be making a male. Next up, we'll be seeing this screen here. You can choose from a list of possible classes to play, or you can make your own custom class by choosing this option. And this option will generate your character's class by answering 10 questions. This is kind of a gimmick, and you don't really need to choose this one ever. So we'll be looking at this option here. And the next thing I have to mention is in Daggerfall, you always want to be making a custom class and not choosing from the list of classes that Bethesda had already created. I know this feels a little bit counterintuitive, especially for new players. It makes a lot of sense why you might think, I don't really know how to build a class, so I'll just use one of the presets made by Bethesda. The idea makes total sense, but unfortunately, these classes are really terribly unoptimized. And even from a class fantasy perspective, they sometimes have very weird picks for skills that you might not really associate with that class. Um, so even if you wanted to play as something like a thief, for example, it's still better to make that thief through the custom class option rather than the pre-made thief that Bethesda made for you. Choosing from the list of pre-made classes is something I'd only recommend someone already pretty familiar with Daggerfall to do, as more of a fun option or as a challenge playthrough for themselves, but never should a new player be choosing one of them, in my opinion. With that understood, it's actually very simple to make your own custom class in this game, and you shouldn't be intimidated by it. And let's go over that now. So this is the screen you'll see when selecting custom class. And I want to briefly talk about how you level up in Daggerfall and why the skills you choose to put in which spots do impact this and do matter. So I think for newer players, it's really not that important. But nonetheless, knowing this will help you better create a custom class, so I'll give a brief explanation. In order to level up in Daggerfall, you need to gain 15 skill from among your 3 primary, your 2 highest major skills, and then your 1 highest minor skill. And so skills that are generally easier to level up, like let's say, for example, jumping or running, um, actually gain a lot of value to your character if placed in the primary or major skill slot. But like I said a little bit ago, I wouldn't worry too much about this unless you really want to create an optimized build for your first playthrough. And it's also important to keep in mind that leveling up quickly is not always a great strategy in Daggerfall. As the higher your level, the more difficult enemies you will find in dungeons, and if you level quickly, you might not give yourself enough time to acquire enough gold to upgrade your equipment and weapons. So there is some value in not leveling up too quickly in Daggerfall anyway. With that understood, let's start selecting some of our skills. So for the sake of this video here, I'll be making a Breton Paladin. So we'll type in our class name here. I'm making a Paladin. And for the first primary skill, um, I would recommend for any sort of holy base class or like a cleric or a warrior priest, some restoration magic. So that's what we're doing for this example. Also, staying on theme, I want to be using blunt weapon. So for whatever build you decide to make, it's really best in Daggerfall just to focus on one weapon choice, and for that weapon choice to be somewhere in your primary skills. That's a decent ground rule that should work for any build, really. So for this paladin, I'll be making him focusing on blunt weapons. And mysticism magic includes spells like Banished Daedra and Holy Touch, which dispels undead. So it's also a great fit for our paladin build here. But I think I'll be putting that in the major skills. Also, restoration magic will include, some of the typical spells like Cure Disease and Heal Health, but also buff spells like Orc Strength and Iron Will, which fortify strength and willpower. I want my paladin to be using heavy two-handed maces, so that's why we're going blunt. And yeah, we'll choose a couple other options here. I want my paladin to be doing a lot of melee. I want his magic to be sort of little auxiliary, kind of just helping a little bit, some buffs, some healing there and there, but I want the melee to be the focus, so dodging is always a decent option as well if you're going to be doing a lot of combat for the primary skill. Again, this is not me trying to build the most optimal idea, it's just giving an example of some decent options here. I'm going to put, let's see what else would be good here. Running is always a decent option. Moving quicker in this game, especially in dungeons, feels really useful. You can dodge attacks more easily, you can dodge spells more easily, so there's a lot of value in running. And I'm also going to put jumping on here. And actually, we'll probably swap, let me just put 2 there. We'll swap jumping for a primary skill and put dodging on a major skill. For our minor skills, I want my paladin to have decent etiquette. Etiquette will help you speak with nobles. Climbing can be useful in dungeons. Critical strike is also a useful one. This helps your chance to hit. And I don't want to be using destruction magic because I'm trying to stick to the paladin class fantasy. I don't want to be really chucking fireballs and stuff like that, so I'll skip that. Medical's a good one. It increases your chance to detect when you are poisoned or diseased. And let's see what else here. These don't really matter too much, but I think we'll go streetwise. This will help us communicate with, um, peasants and civilians, non-nobles. And last, maybe we'll choose a language skill like Sylvan Tongue. So language skills like Sylvan Tongue and etiquette also, for example. Etiquette will help you speak with nobles, maybe get more information from them. Um, but it also can be used, every language skill, to pacify enemies that are part of that enemy group. So for etiquette, enemies like knights um, belong to the etiquette um, enemy group. And by clicking on them, you can roll for a chance to pacify them based on your etiquette skill. And the same is true for Sylvan Tongue with enemies like centaurs. And if we were looking at some other ones like necromancy can be used to pacify undead or skeletons, orcish for orcs. So yeah, it's a very cool addition to the game and can be very useful, especially Daedric. Pacifying Daedric enemies can be really strong in this game. Once we have all of our skills selected, we're going to take a look at the advantages and disadvantages system afterwards. So you can select a certain number of advantages or disadvantages when building your character. This meter right here will determine how much quicker or how much slower you will gain experience in comparison to a character with neither advantages or disadvantages. So choosing an advantage will make your character level slower. The meter will go up, and it takes more experience to level up. And choosing disadvantages will make your character level up faster, so the meter will go down. And so the idea is you need to balance these advantages and disadvantages as to not make your character too slow to level while also benefiting from some really nice passive effects. So, for example, if I built my character to, let's say, we want bonus to hit against the undead because we're making a paladin build. And let's say we also want immunity to paralysis. And we will be casting some spells. So increased magery is always a very, very important advantage to grab on anyone that casts spells. Even if it's just supplementing a martial build like this paladin here, it's still very important to grab 3 times int and spell points. It's one of the most useful advantages for anyone that has spells. So we'll grab that one as well for this character. And you can see which each one of these that I'm selecting, the meter here is going up and indicating that it'll be harder for this level, for this character to level up. There's a few other ones that you can grab, and you can see they so slightly increase the meter that they might be good additions for a martial build. Advantages like athleticism and adrenaline rush. And then this is extremely high right now. It'll almost take 3 times the amount of experience for us to level up. So we don't want that. So we'll click some disadvantages to lower this meter. Maybe we'll make our paladin have a critical weakness to disease, since we'll have restoration magic anyway, and we can cure these diseases pretty easily once we make the spells for it. And so maybe we'll do the same with poison. And these two really reduce our meter here, making it much easier for us to level. And maybe also as a paladin, I'll be forbidden from using Daedric weapons. And forbidden from using, well, this is actually any material, so this is Daedric weapons or armors. And maybe we're also forbidden from using axes, since we want to focus on blunt weapons anyway. And let's see. Let's say also, because we are a paladin, that we have lowered magic ability in darkness. Darkness in this game also includes anytime you're in a dungeon. So with that in mind, this is a pretty uh, bad disadvantage, honestly. If you're any type of spellcaster, you really don't want this unless you're doing some other kind of cheesy thing where you use spell absorption to get all your spell points back. But in general, you don't want this if you're making any kind of magic build. But you can see here, it's pretty low now. Another option is to increase the max hit points you gain per level. And this will also, as you see, make it a little bit more difficult to level up on each uh, 1 point you add to this. And so I think you can already see how the system is one of the most unique and fun features of Daggerfall's character creation system, because it allows you to further refine the concept of your class fantasy, or further define the character you're trying to roleplay as. And what I mean by this is basically that these advantages and disadvantages, it adds a lot of personality to your character. If I want to make a paladin, with these type of ideas, um, without the advantages and disadvantages, I wouldn't get to have these little extra cool concepts that really fine tune the fantasy I'm trying to build here. Um, these alterations, really emphasize the characteristics of class fantasy. Bonus to hit to undead, increase points here, some focus on melee options, and disadvantages like being forbidden to use, evil material like Daedric material, um, or having my magic affected when I'm in darkness since I'm a holy, warrior. Um, this system allows the player to craft some really unique aspects for their character that go beyond just, class builds or skills or other similar functions. I think it's the defining feature of Daggerfall's character creation system. But that's enough ranting about that stuff. Next, we can change which attributes we want our stat rolls to focus on. You don't really have to worry too much about the numbers you see on this screen here, because we'll be given a chance later to actually make our rolls and properly set this up. So you can just slightly change these to give the game an idea of where you want your stats to end up. I'm going to lower willpower here. Um, and increase endurance, and maybe lower our luck a little bit and our personality a little bit. If you are a spellcaster that's focused on, casting spells, you want your int to be really high, and you can really drop things like strength or agility if you're going to be focusing on a playthrough like that. But for the paladin, we're a bit of a hybrid that's a little bit more focused on melee, so something like this I think is okay. And when you're ready, hit the exit button to move on. On this screen, we don't want to do this fast start. We want to choose our character's career path by answering 12 important career decisions that influence our character background. So we'll click on this here, and you'll get 12 different questions. The unofficial Elder Scrolls Pages site has a lot of the potential questions you might receive and the benefits of each answer. So I definitely recommend referring to that when making your character, because you might receive a few different questions than I'm receiving, because it's based on the decisions you made in character select. So let's take a look here. After the School of Restoration, what magic have you been studying the longest? This will increase your skill in whichever one you choose. For our character, we only chose Restoration and Mysticism, so let's choose Mysticism. What motivates you into a life of adventure? So each one of these have different benefits. You'll get some gold for riches. Um, and like I said, you can refer to the unofficial Elder Scrolls site, the wiki. But I think fun increases things like your streetwise and your etiquette, and I think fame increases reputation with some certain factions. So for this, I'm just going to choose knowledge. In between formal study, you spent your time learning, socializing with aristocrats. Actually, we have etiquette, so that's a good one for this. Since childhood, you saved. All these are okay. Not to worry too much about what you choose here, but books are actually worth a lot in this game, and they sell a lot. So that's usually a decent option. And this one is the most important question here. Um, the Ebony Dagger is an extremely strong option in Daggerfall's character creation. It's good for pretty much any build, really, and it's super useful specifically in getting through the first dungeon, Privateer's Hold. That dungeon acts as a sort of tutorial dungeon, so the Ebony Dagger is, a really good option for people that are newer to the game. So I'm going to choose that for this character, but I could also choose the Elven Flail since I'm making a, blunt focused weapon. So actually, I'll be choosing that for myself, but I do recommend an Ebony Dagger for people that are newer to the game, having a strong weapon to get through the initial tutorial dungeon. As you grew older, you received additional magical training in, let's go with the School of Restoration. And here we can see uh, the childhood nickname one. So the rabbit increases your skill in jumping, Guppy increases your skill in swimming, Quicksilver is running, Scrapper is hand to hand. Yeah, that's correct. And Monkey is climbing. Yeah, Monkey is climbing. Okay. So for this character, we'll choose Quicksilver, which is running. You're friendlier than most with, this isn't too important, just choose whichever one you think fits your class fantasy. I'll say that I'm more friendly with the centaurs. Of all disagreeable types, you have the most personal hatred for, let's go with immoral assassin, since I'm a holy warrior. You're intimate friends with monks. And what god, if any, do you worship? This is, you know, relatively important, I'd say. It'll help you join um, temples that follow the same god as you. So I will say my god is Stendar, god of mercy. I think that fits a paladin pretty well. You have the most trouble with. So this is a disadvantage. Avoiding diseases will make you more likely to contract them. Same with poisons. Um, Staying awake and alert, I think it slightly affects your stamina. It's a pretty mild disadvantage, so that's always a safe choice. And then you can see how your reputation has changed with some of the different options of factions here. Then in the next page, we'll name ourselves. What's pretty cool about Daggerfall's naming system is they have a sort of suffix and prefix system for the names, and each race has a different set of them. And they randomize them to give you sort of a lore-friendly option, so I like choosing the random name. I'll go with Theodorin Kingston. And then you choose a face. You don't have to worry too much about the face. There is a way in Daggerfall Unity to change it later on. And actually, in my Daggerfall Unity guides video, I showcase the process of changing your face later in the game. But I'll go with the gentleman's face over here. And when you choose one you like, press OK. And now, finally, we can start rolling for our stats and choosing how to build our attributes. So, first things first, you can re-roll with this button over here until you find one that you think has a lot of points here and decent stat allocation here as well. You can press the save roll button even after adding points. Let's say, for example, I choose this, and then I press the save roll button. I can go back to re-rolling, and if at any time I don't feel like I found a better option, I can press the load roll button, and it'll send me right back to the roll that I saved. Some little information here about the attributes. Strength increases your max encumbrance, which is your carrying weight, and the damage you deal. So it's 5 points to get 1 extra damage on strength. Intelligence is for your spell points. Willpower is magic resistance. It takes 10 agility points to increase your chance to hit. It's a very expensive stat, but also a very useful one for any martial build. Endurance is health, which is really just good for everyone. Personality affects how NPCs will talk to you, generally. And speed is a really useful stat. It increases your move speed and your attack speed. So this one is really good for everyone in this game. And luck is, affects your chance to be hit and a few other things that don't seem to make too much of a difference, but yeah, it's good to have a decent amount of it. 50 or so is okay, I'd say. Um, Another important thing to keep in mind is that all skills belong to a certain attribute, except for luck, which I think has no skills related to it. And each of these skills are leveled more easily with more of that attribute. So, for example, having more strength increases the speed at which you level skills like axe or jumping. So that's something to keep in mind when building your character. And once we're happy with our attribute points, we can move on to the next screen here. You'll be given a couple more skill points to put into whatever you like. Increasing your primary weapon option is always a good choice here. And so is something like a magic school. And for me, with this character, I'll also increase my etiquette. And when you're ready, press the OK button. This option. This lets you choose the overall speed for the game. The higher you go, the faster things will feel, and you might need to react more quickly to enemies approaching you or to dodge their attack animations or their spells. But me personally, I like to play on very high or high. High feels pretty good for me. And now we move on to the final page where we confirm all of our choices and we can begin the game. And we'll be treated with the opening cutscene here.
400 years after Tyroset.
I did my best to create a really thorough and information-dense character creation guide for Daggerfall Unity that is still accessible and understandable for newer players. If you're a new player, I really hope you found this video helpful. And for Daggerfall veterans, let me know in the comments if I missed anything important. I have a lot of love for Daggerfall's character creation system. It's my favorite in any game, and I hope you'll have fun building your own unique custom classes. Thanks again for watching, and take care, everyone.